Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of the Pos-cast with Rabbi Shmuel Posner and myself, Seth Hellman. Rabbi, how you doing today?
Baruch Hashem, we're good. We're good. We're good. The sun is out. For Leah, our daughter is graduating from high school today.
Mazel tov.
That's a big deal. She's our youngest, our youngest daughter, youngest child. So it's pretty, it's big. It's big. It's huge. So that's what's going on today. That's in the news today from the Posner family on the Post.
You're getting extra old. You were already old once the first one graduated high school, but now you're like extra old because now the youngest one's out of high school.
You want to get fired? It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, so let's get into it. So what is this missing daf in Sotah that I've been made aware of here?
It's a fascinating daf. It talks about laws of Tuma and Tara, purity and impurity. You know, halacha, purity and impurity come in contact. You know, there's the grandfather of impurity, which is the deceased body. Then there's the father then the son is called the father of impurity. Then comes the first level, second level, third level, fourth level. And basically what happens is when you go away from the original source of the impurity, so if you're talking about, let's say, a deceased body, a person touches it, right? Then if that person touches another person, it doesn't go parallel. It always goes down it goes down a level, which really means it goes up a level. Meaning to say is that when you come to original source of tumah, it can make something else impure. The next level has to be something which is more sensitive to impurity. Now, what makes something sensitive, not sensitive, pretty much is a halachic thing, but you can understand that as well. So, for example, a person can't make another person tameh, impure, but a person could make food impure. And then food can't make other food impure because that would be on the same level. It has to go up a level, which really is something more sensitive. It would be like truma. So truma can be the third level, and then truma can't make other truma tameh, but it could make sacrifices tameh. There's actually a fascinating book that has a map, because I'm going to give them very simple. Then the whole thing with liquids always go back to the first level. So anyway, so there's a map called the Map of Satara, and it's like it's a thin book with all the laws, and then it has this big layout map where how everything goes from one level to another level. And it's really, and the guy who made this book many years ago sent it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "You're missing one level, because there's like the first is food, the second, the first is a person, the second is food, the third is truma, the tithing gift to a kohen, which has to be eaten in purity. The fourth is sacrifices, but there's a fifth level that's even more sensitive." That is Hara Aduma, the red heifer, which is in 2 weeks parsha. So the Rebbe looked at the whole book and like, oh, you missed that one. Anyway, so that's what that page of the Talmud talks about. These types of laws are considered one of the most difficult laws in Talmud. And thank you for reminding me and bringing it up. Now, make it even better. I met a colleague yesterday, a fellow shliach in Massachusetts, and he says, "Oh, I was listening to the Pos-cast. Did you learn that page of Talmud yet?" So we got to be careful when we talk about it because it gets around.
I mean, you don't. The thing though with Tuma and Tahara in particular is you don't have to learn some missing page in Sotah to learn about Tuma and Tahara because it comes up all the time.
Right. When you least expect it, it comes in like, and what's about the laws of Tuma and Tahara? Yeah, that's true. But so it's all over the place. But the reason I think what makes it difficult is because it's not like there's a certain amount of logic, but a certain amount of like, this is the way it is. This makes this tummy, that makes that tummy. And it's a little bit disconnected from us because we don't, all these things are not as, it's like laws of eating kosher, milk and meat. So you think about, what happens in my kitchen? This is a little bit more abstract. But it's good stuff.
Yeah, the thing that's always confused me about it is less so the concept of it, because I've so obviously it comes up in Daf Yomi all the time, and we have charts for it, right? So it starts off with, whatever they usually use like a mouse, or like a dead mouse as kind of the initial thing, right? And then you have your Avatuma, and then your Rishon Sheni, like it just kind of goes down like that. And then they have arrows that, like, if something gets wet, boom, pops up here,
Right.
right? And so for me, it's never been all that confusing when they come up, when they start talking about it. But the Mugged Shear always says, and I know we're coming up to Tuma and Tahara here, and people always kind of shut down and like they think it's too difficult. But I was like, this is not the most difficult thing to understand when you just think about it logically, right? And if you have some sort of a diagram in front of you, so that's always confused me about it.
Right. So you are spoiled because you have somebody making diagrams for you. When you're sitting with the Gemara and with the Rashi and trying to figure out like what's going on and the various opinions. Yeah, I mean, it's all understandable, but it's just a little bit tougher, that's all. So we did it.
So we did get a question from the audience. This is not the only thing that's been sparked by audience questions. We got a question from Rabbi Nussin Rodin, or is it Rodin or Rodin? I don't know. Do you know this Rabbi Nussin?
I do, actually.
So who is Rabbi Nussin?
He's a shliach in Israel, also on campus. And so he calls me every once in a while to schmooze, to confer.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm gonna shorten up his comment a little bit because it's a bit broad, but I think we can boil it down into what is the most memorable moment at the Chabad house?
That's a question for me.
Yeah, that's a question for you.
The most
of course it is. So okay, if you need time to think, I have a very memorable one.
Okay. You go first.
If I remember correctly, it was Shabbos dinner. Things blend together, so it could have been a yontif, some kind, whatever. I'm pretty sure it was Shabbos dinner. And these two guys had shown up that were not necessarily super versed in everything that was going on. And so they finish eating, and they're getting up to leave early. And I'm sitting with Mendel at the end of the table, and they get up to go, and Rabbi says, like a good rabbi, make sure to thank Hashem for the food. And so the two guys look at Hani and say, thank you for the food. Because they didn't understand that what you wanted was for them to bench.
No, so the truth of the matter is that in this Chabad house, the closest you can get to Hashem is Hani, so that's fine. but it's funny you mention that story because this past Friday night, a kid got up also to leave, and he said, "Thank you, Hashem, for the food." And then after he left, I told everybody exactly this story. Memorable moments in the Chabad house. I mean, there's so many, and they come in so many different categories. We can write a whole book about them called "Memorable Moments at the Chabad House." They come memorable moments. Of course, there's one full section of connect with the Rebbe. When we used to go down for dollars, and students would meet the Rebbe and different interactions that they had. That's just fascinating because the students, we would drive 4 hours to go to Crown Heights. Usually we'd go, if we went for Shabbos, and it would be on Sunday, but a couple of times we just drove down Sunday morning. So it was a one-day trip. And the students, wanted to get the most out of it. So they thought that the thing to do is to ask the Rebbe for a blessing for something. And then they get a little more extra attention or something. I didn't tell them to do that. I would never tell them to do that. And the truth of the matter is that that's not the way, if you have something to ask, you do. If not, don't waste the Rebbe's time, so to speak. Waste the Rebbe's time. But, it was just, those like gems, and for these kids also to remember it and have, there was one particular student who was becoming more observant, and her father wasn't very happy about it. And so she went by to the Rebbe and asked for a bracha for her family. And so she got an extra $1 for it. It ended up that her father actually turned 180 degrees and became like the president of the local Chabad house in their town. So that was, those were powerful and memorable moments that going to class of their own. In the Chabad house itself, I don't know. There's I guess memorable moments when a guy I remember it was a Shabbos. This kid had come for Pesach for the Seder. And remember, he was sitting right at our table. We had a bunch of tables around the room. So my table was like our table with the family. And like there's another couple of spaces. I picked somebody to sit there. And the person who sit there comes in two categories. Either like somebody I really wanted to talk to because I thought like this, would be really interested and be really into the Seder. So it can be near me and we could, when we're not having a major part of Seder, to talk to him. Or it'd be like the biggest nudnik in the room that I wanted to annoy anybody else and say, sit over here so I can watch you. I didn't say this, and that was my thought process. Sit here because wherever you're going to sit, you're going to drive people crazy. I can deal with it. So anyway, so this kid, I don't know, started coming to Chabad after that Pesach Seder, and then very focused and very driven. And then he gets up one Shabbos and says, I decided to go to Kfar Chabad, the Chabad, Chabad village in Israel, where there was a Baal Tshuva yeshiva. I'm going to yeshiva. I'm like, what? What? How did that happen? And he actually, married family, Lubavitcher, the whole bit, very good friends still. And that his kids are actually, his daughter is graduating high school with my daughter today. That's really amazing.
Wow. How
about those second generation connections are like, that stand out special. This past Shabbos, there's a girl here who goes to school in Providence, and she's doing an internship at some kind of firm here in Boston. So she came for Shabbos. And her father started, well, I don't know if he started his trip, but a major part of his trip to observance was at our Chabad house 25 years ago. So Connie and I are looking at this girl and saying, your father sat right on that seat, that. I'm like, that was like, that's crazy. That's a memorable moment. Those are the latest in our fourth decade. Starting our fourth decade, we're having those type of memorable moments. But that's this kid standing up and saying he's going to go to yeshiva was amazing. Somebody buying a pair. You want to hear this story?
Sorry, I'm trying to do the math on this. You started at the Chabad house in Boston in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you count from there, your first decade completed in the 90s, your second decade completed into the 2000s, your third completed in the 2010s. So now you are in your fourth decade. Yeah. Good job.
Right. Okay. We consider, that there's two ways of counting it, after you first, whatever. Anyway, but thanks for the math lesson. So we're doing the fundraiser now. This is not like, we're allowed to advertise.
Give the Chabad house money.
ChabadBoston.org/raffle. If you go to ChabadBoston.org, that'll be enough. You'll find it. You'll get the money to us.
Is there you finish what you're saying and then
So one of the things that the raffle does is it forces me, which we spoke about this last week, it forces me to contact alumni because current students are not, I don't want like asking them for money because then it's like pay to play. I don't like doing that. But sometimes parents are very generous. And it's really a beautiful thing, to know that, I don't need anybody to tell me what I'm doing what we're doing is a good thing. We know that. But to have parents expressing their appreciation, and in America, the way you express your appreciation is by supporting what we're doing. I don't even like using the word supporting. I use the word partnering. Here's the deal. We don't need your money. We will get out what we need to get. And that's, it's a fascinating thing. When you do fundraising, you got to believe in God. Why? Because you have this guy, you have like your list from last year, right? All these people contributed and we made X amount of money. If only these people gave the same amount of money, I don't have to do anything. Just send out, let everybody know we're doing the fundraiser. They give all the money and boom, it's done. It never works that way. Never, ever, ever. So the guy last year we're doing raffle tickets, right? So $36 a ticket. Last year, the guy bought 20 tickets. This year, 5. I'm like, what the heck? So I don't want to call people and say, I could, you bought 20 tickets because then I start fetching like, the economy to this, whatever, everybody has their story. And it might be true stories. I'm not saying it's not true stories. So I'd rather just like send it out and see what happens. And so what happens is the guy who bought 20 last year will buy 5 this year. And the guy who bought 3 last year is buying 30 this year. So Hashem makes it always works out. The only question is how much effort I have to put into it. So easiest thing is send a mass email or text or put it on Instagram or Facebook, blah, 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 blah. And people, and a lot of people, there's one guy, an MIT grad, many years ago. He is always the first. It's like minutes after the email is sent, boom, he's there. It's amazing. Amazing. It's wonderful. If you're like 50 like him, life would be easier. But no, Hashem doesn't make it like that. It's not the man that falls from heaven. You got to work for it. So on one email, another email. And then I know I receive these type of emails also because, I end up on somebody's mailing list. And I was like, oh, no, another fundraiser, another. So it's annoying. So after a while, I stopped doing the mass emails and started sending individual, like, dude, pay up. Anyway, but the side benefit is it makes me start thinking, aside from the money aspect, start thinking about the alumni. So there's one kid, this is a great story, one kid who came to BU, it was like 7 years ago. I think he was here only 1 year, maybe 2 max. And he was part of the Chabad, one of the Chevra. He's a cool kid. He knew how to fly airplanes. But he wasn't very loud and boisterous about it. He was quiet about it. Anyway, he was a great kid and he was part of the Chevra. And said, oh man, this kid is going to be, he went to BU. I had in mind, he'll become the president of the student organization. That'll be fantastic, right? And he announces to me, I'm transferring. Like, what do you mean you're transferring? I didn't give him permission. So he ended up going back to his home state and going to a state school. All right. And he got involved with Chabad there. Everything's fine and good. So I stayed in contact with him, once in a while, this and that. And then finally this week I called him. So and it's nothing to do with the money at all because he's in law school now. So I don't even expect, that wasn't the issue whatsoever. So I talking to him this and that and what's going on. And he's like in his 2nd year of law school and I'm talking about the connection to Chabad there. And there's a young Jewish professional, yada, yada, yada. Then I say to him, what's about tefillin? Did you ever get a pair of tefillin? Because I remember we used to put on tefillin on a regular, pretty regular basis. And then, he went off to this other Chabad house and whatever, I figured they were dealing with him. I couldn't remember, did he have, if he had a pair of tefillin, some people have a pair of tefillin at home, but they never bring it. Some people never got a pair of tefillin. I said, did you ever get a pair of tefillin? He said, no. He said, I think I should get a pair. I said, I think so too. So I said to him, let's, go to the local Chabad guy there and he'll get you a pair of tefillin. Arrange it. There's programs to help offset the costs and stuff like that. And I hung up and I said, nah, that's not good enough. So I find the guy who lives in the guy he's referring to that does the YJP there. And I call him and I hear in the back, like somebody singing. I said, what's going on there? He said, I'm at a wedding. I said, are you officiating? No. I said, could we talk? Yeah, we can talk, no problem. So I started telling him about this. Oh, he said, you wouldn't believe it. I said, this guy he doesn't come that often, whatever, he's in law school and he works, so like when this guy does young Jewish professional programs Tuesday night, it doesn't work that well for him. In fact, he says, like he has night classes, but it's like a commuter type school, whatever. So he says, I just had a program Friday night. I was thinking of inviting him. In fact, I was actually thinking yesterday to call him. And I said, oh, it's amazing. And so quickly closed the deal and said, make sure you call him. I said, what should we call him tomorrow morning? Tell him I spoke to you. I said, we haven't, the fact that we collaborate is not a secret, it's not. So I think I have to find out, check up on him. Here's the craziest thing. Guy says, I should come to Boston sometime to visit you. I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. Then somewhere in the conversation, he says, actually, I'm flying to London via Boston. I'm going to be in Boston Thursday morning. I said, send me I'll meet you. Boom. So he's coming to Boston. So I don't know if I'll have this filming with him, but I'll definitely meet him with film to rap tune with him. But that was just an amazing thing. Like, I was thinking of calling him, finally called him. This guy was thinking of calling him. We connect. The kid will have tefillin. No question of will it be this week or whatever it's going to work out. That was just a very cool story.
I have two things. So the first one is what I was going to say before is there like a special, like, is this a special time of the year for people to be asking money? Because Young Israel in Brookline is doing the same thing. They've got their fundraiser
We
going.
don't advertise other people's fundraisers on this program.
I'm just saying that you're not the only Jewish organization within a mile and a half of where you are that is doing a fundraiser at this exact time.
Their clientele is not my clientele. And number two is,
right.
I guess it's a good time. It's like if you knew twice a year, this is probably a good time. And December and June, July, whatever. I don't know. Anyway,
the other thing is, I was listening to you talking about the tefillin, and I was thinking I saw this video the other day of the Meaningful Minute guy was in Crown Heights, and he was interviewing someone, and like a Chabad shliach, and the guy was out. He told the story about how he was out tabling at one point, right? And a guy came by and he looked Jewish. So, of course, the whole thing, are you Jewish? Yes. Do you want to wrap tefillin? And the guy says no. And I forget what his exact response was, but it was something along the lines of, it doesn't really matter or something like that. Or like the guy like didn't believe in God or something. And normally the Chabad rabbi, the guy said that like normally he would just, let the guy keep walking and whatever. And for whatever reason, that particular instance, that particular exchange, he was like, you know what? No, and he said to him, he was like, that's kind of sad. And so they had like a long conversation. And I don't know if the end of it at that particular instance was that he got him to wrap tefillin that day, but they had a long conversation, stayed in contact, and the guy is like a big, like he's got his own Chabad house now. Like he's, he runs a Chabad house somewhere. And I just like, I literally just saw that story the other day. I just think it's such a cool, like, tefillin, the whole message with that, and the whole, how it just brings like such a small thing that takes you 2 minutes, right? Like for if you're not getting into like the deep message of it, right? Like it's something that from someone who's never done it before, it seems so small. And then all of a sudden it can just branch out into something so large.
That was totally the Rebbe's approach based on the Mishnah, mitzvah gereres mitzvah. One mitzvah brings along another mitzvah. So if you think about planting a seed in the ground, and you come back however how long it takes, and all of a sudden there's a tree with fruit. It all starts with a little seed. That's the whole point. It's like every mitzvah has that power of regenerating. One mitzvah, another mitzvah, another mitzvah. Yeah, there's so many stories like that where like the guy who came to the Seder, whatever. There's something we have a complete belief and are certain that every Jew has a holy neshama, which is called an eretz chayfetz, a land full of potential. It's so like you take fertile ground. We can just put some seeds into it. The neshama is a fertile ground for planting mitzvahs, and once they go, it takes off. It's wonderful. I think I mentioned this last week, but this alum that came by with her son. I don't know if you remember this. Anyway, so this a couple of weeks ago on a Friday, this woman, to me she's still a girl, but she's like 25 years after she graduated, so she's not she's a little bit older, so only 20 years. So she came by with her son. And they'd come to Boston for some reason, and whatever, they came by to visit. And so I'm sitting with this 10-year-old kid. His English name is Asher, like Usher, Asher. So so I say in contrast when she says, "Oh, I was listening to your Pos-cast, and Asher likes it too." And I'm like, "Oh my golly, we have a 10-year-old who's a fan."
Nice.
So the thing was that when he came, I know how it started. His mother said something. he doesn't believe in God. I'm like, oh.
10 years old, and you've got
10 years
level
old.
of...
But what I found is in my short career, the few times, or because few times I don't usually deal with children, little children. Talking to children is, and especially talking to children, like there was one time I remember in the Chabad house, it was a Shabbos or a Yom Tov, I think it was around Simchas Torah time, maybe Shmini Atzeres, and for some reason we had like 15 or 20, it was a class of Hebrew school students. I don't remember how they got here, but they got here. So I got up to give this little talk in shul, and there was, the minyan was there, and then there was these 10 or 15, 10, 11-year-old kids, and so I was speaking to them. So I was able to speak to children in the way I talk to children. And I think it was one of the best talks I ever gave, because the clarity was 100%. And so the adults had to sit through this. Now, I would talk to adults that way, they would like roll their eyes. But hearing them talk to each other, I realized as I was speaking that the message was so simple and so clear that everybody had to get it. I think, you know what it was? It was about why we dance with the Sefer Torah when it's wrapped up. And so I went through this whole thing. Imagine it's your birthday, and your mom said she's going to get you a present, and she comes in with this box, and it's covered with beautiful paper. And it's like, before you even open it, you're so excited. You just realize your mother loves you so much. It's your birthday. She brought this beautiful gift, and it looked like gorgeous packaging. And you pick it up and you start dancing with it. You don't even know what it is. And then afterwards, you open it up and you use it. And that was the analogy of why we dance with the Torah. Like just knowing that Hashem gave us his Torah, that's like the greatest salvation there can be. Then afterwards, you sit down and learn what it says in it. Anyway, so I'm sitting with this usher, and he's like, he doesn't believe in God. So like, where do you go with that? Where do you go with that? So I said, the classic thing is, we don't believe in God. We know that God exists. It's not a belief. The whole thing, what does knowledge mean? Something that, anyway, like when you go to a doctor, do you know the doctor's good, or you believe he's good? You don't just believe, or else you just pick any random doctor and go. You have references. So you say, I know he's a good doctor because I spoke to 4 of my friends. I saw where he went to school. I saw, reviews. So I know he's a good doctor. I believe he'll be good for me because I don't know that for a fact. So there's knowing is believing. So I said to this kid, I said to Asher, I said, where were you before you were born? And he says, I was in my mother's womb. I said, no, where were you before that? And so I was trying to get across to him the idea of nothing. What is nothing? That there's a point when there's nothing, and that's where everything starts. And there's got to be something that starts everything. Of course, his natural question that a child would ask is, well, if everything comes from God, who made God? Like, that's just a classic question. Okay, so now it was had to come to the point of like, there's got to be a first that isn't affected by anything that comes before it. I mean, in the words of the Rambam, it's so easy to say. When you're saying to a 10-year-old kid, you're like, whoa, how do you break that down? Anyway, that was just an amazing interaction. Again, the mother who had sat at our Shabbos table Friday night, who knows how many times, comes in with her kid, had this conversation about, recognizing who God is. Beautiful, great experience, memorable moment.
I think we're getting close to our time limit here, so let's end things up and wrap. Do you have a particular thought from the Rebbe, perhaps, that you were thinking of that you wanted to share?
Yeah. I always do. My father, he should be well, live many, many more years. He told me once, many, 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 many years ago, he said, whenever you go somewhere as a guest, like a bar mitzvah, whatever it might be, you always need to prepare to speak. You never know. You have to have something in your head. So I listened to this thing, they have like it's an app, and you
God
click on
forbid
it.
an app.
It's holy. It's a holy app. And you click on it, and every day there's a talk from the Rebbe, but not a long talk. It's like 5 to 10 minutes, and it's just a thought. And they have a transcript of it, but they also have it in Yiddish. The Rebbe the original Rebbe speaking. So when I drive, I click that on in the morning. So I start my day with the Rebbe. So he's talking. The Rebbe was talking about today's portion of the Rambam, which is the conclusion of the laws of Yontif. And so the Rambam writes there that there's sometimes when you go in Israel, Yontif is 1 day. Outside of Israel is 2 days. And then there's different customs about like Erev Yontif, do you work, do you not work? And basically Rambam says, when you go to a place that has a different custom, you should follow their custom. But if you're going to follow your custom, because your custom is stricter, you should follow your, but you should do it in a way that it's not in public, so it doesn't cause any strife. So the Rebbe says, what lesson is there? Lesson is here. We're talking about, we always tell a Jew, be proud to be a Jew. Show your Judaism, be proud, right? Wear a yarmulke, and the Rebbe didn't say this, but wear a yarmulke in the street, wear a beard, tzitzis, be proud of your Judaism. Here we're saying to you just the opposite. You have a custom that's stricter than the place you're going to. You can do it, but do it privately so you don't upset people and you don't cause machlokes, disagreement, arguments. And that was the Rebbe's thought. The Rebbe was talking there you do this every year before the summer, talk to the graduates of the girls' school, and the counselors going to camp. They're going to run the overnight camps, whatever, day camps. So that was the thought the Rebbe said, you got to be sensitive to other people. So when you have, you could be strict in your own personal Yiddishkeit, your own personal Jewish observance, but if it's going to upset somebody, you have to find a way to do it in a way that's peaceful and brings harmony amongst Jews. I think that's a very powerful message for each of us individually and for the Jews around the world. We need harmony, peace, and love amongst the Jewish people. And then when that's the basis of it, then we can start talking about influencing others to a higher level of observance.
I think it's a great thought to kind of keep in mind for the next week and a great thought to wrap up on. So thank you for joining us for episode 8 of the Pos-cast with Rabbi Shmuel Posner. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, and we're on Google Podcasts. So hopefully there's something for every single one of you that makes it easier for you to listen to us. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.